Hey guys, Dehydrayton here. Today, I want to give you a simple understanding of what the prison planet is. So, Earth, Gaia, our planet, whatever, it has its own electromagnetic field. Okay, whether that's natural as a result of the Earth just existing because everything has its own frequency, or if this is actually more of a matter that something else put a field over that existing field, which is where you get into the ideas of what an archon is, or people talking about reptilians and all these other like really deep conspiracy stuff. I might make like a more comprehensive video about that, but for me, I don't personally know much about it. But I do have connections who do know about it, so it might just be a matter of like having them as a guest on a podcast episode. Which, by the way, I have all 3 episodes. I just need to edit the episode 2 and 3, and then on my birthday, March 22nd. Yeah, I know my birthday just happens to land on Skull and Bones. They're gonna gematria in my ass, but yeah, on March 22nd, the podcast will be officially released. I got the flow for how we're going to do our content for that, so I'm really excited. But yeah, I'd prefer if you migrated over to that, honestly, because it might be harder to continue doing YouTube videos while I do that. Because the podcast is actually like my business. But the network opportunity I'm working on is also like my baby. That's like the main thing I want to work towards, which is essentially creating a network opportunity for talkative introverts. Basically, I want to gather up society's what I call open communicators, the people who they're always the therapists in the friends group, the type of people who naturally include everyone in a conversation because they knew what it was like in childhood to be like excluded from group events and stuff like that. Always being the odd kid out. But yeah, let's get into this really quick. Why this field is important that's outside of the Earth is because this is supposedly the reason why their reincarnation even exists. That it's not even really a natural cycle of the universe, but it's actually something that was installed here so that we could continue being a farming system for the people who rule Earth right now. And so that's really fucking interesting because if that is the case, then I think it's a natural program. I think it was something that naturally formed itself as a result of the astrological ages that were passing and how we were slowly advancing in consciousness after the fall, which was that period about 12,000 years ago where we just forgot who we are. And then the new people, the middlemen, like religions, governments, stuff like that, they started putting all of these self-imposed rules that we believe is human nature after that. Before that, we were all one ancient global civilization, and technology was booming. It just isn't the way you're imagining it now, where we have fucking smartphones and smart boards and all this other bullshit. Not discrediting them. It's just when you're comparing how it was to how it is, it's just like we actually are the slow ones, and we keep thinking that the ancients are the primitives, but they're not. We just had our shit wiped from that global flood that every ancient culture has been recording, and then solar flares that were happening in a cyclical nature, which caused earthquakes and Jesus, like we were just getting wiped the fuck out, like by weather, and no wonder why we lost our information. Like even like one of the most tangible things that you can grasp is like imagine where we would be at now if the Library of Alexandria, if we had all that information. And the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure we have most of the books like recovered from the Library of Alexandria. They are most likely in the Vatican Secret Archives, and they just burned the fucking place after that, or they burned the religious shit. But I just know that like with the Library of Alexandria, there was supposedly records of Atlantis, because that was like the civilization right next to it. Watch a series by Bright Insight talking about Atlantis finally discovered, because it pretty much almost undoubtedly confirms that Atlantis was actually in Africa. Oh yeah, and it's also important to note that like Atlantis was a human civilization. It was an ancient advanced human civilization. It wasn't aliens, but it was just higher vibrational forms of ourself. That's why it was called the fall, because after that cataclysm happened 12,000 years ago, we forgot who the fuck we were. Because the last people who were in that vibrational range, they can't even appear physically on Earth anymore. Because that's when Earth shifted from a third dimensional field, not the actual physical planet, the field, which is how the consciousness is receiving the information of the planet. It shifted from a third dimensional field to a fourth dimensional field. That's why indigo children exist now, starting at the 1970s. Because we're finally tapping into the information that the Earth is now cycling as new information. But that's another note. With this collective unconscious field, which is like this band, think of it as like a layer of atmosphere almost. It may not be physically right there. It may just be the Van Allen belt itself, which is this huge area of radiation outside of the Earth. But with this collective unconsciousness field, we are the ones actively building on it and strengthening it. And this is supposedly what is creating reincarnation. So we're actually feeding into this huge ass force field. Think about it like as the Berlin Wall. these three lines right here is how your soul actually goes through or experiences this field after you physically die. And basically, and this also kind of follows like Reggie Biv, where like the frequencies get slower and then eventually speed up and they go fast. With unconscious, this is pretty much, like red, where it's like one of the slowest frequencies. When you're unconscious, you're asleep. And that's why it's actually a trap right now where they're trying to get everyone to be a dreamer. Be a dreamer. That's a trap because we have enough dreamers. Everyone knows how to imagine and visualize what they want to see out of the future. The problem is we need to be able to fucking practically ground our dreams. We need to be able to actually take those ideas from the air and turn it into matter. And so we need to be practical dreamers. That doesn't mean diminish your ideas. That just means figure out which is the best angle that resonates with you for you to actually show your dreams to others. When you go through this like hustle and bustle of every day and you're in like this the third dimensional perspective, you're unconscious where you're unaware of the spirit within your body. And basically, when your consciousness goes through this field that the archons created, that's like creating this reincarnation cycle, you go up, you hit the field, and then you bounce right back. That's reincarnation. Too slow of a frequency returns you back to physicality so that you can retry. And the reason why this is because how unconscious, this is the field, the unconscious, how it's going slow and it's going through. And it's not vibrating high enough to actually experience this. So it's only being reflected back, like a mirror. So when you're like talking to people, you're experiencing an iteration of yourself, which is why it's pretty cool because you can learn lessons from other people's behaviors and actually not be affected by other people's behaviors. You still can ground yourself in the knowing of who you are. The unconscious experiences the field, returns back, and then it has amnesia, and then it starts the life cycle over again. So now let's go into the next one, which is conscious, this whole consciousness movement that's been going on, where people are waking up, but they're really just opening their eyes. They're not necessarily actually walking around in waking reality, experiencing shit. They're getting used to this intake of new information, and they're really focused on how they just escaped from the past, or transcended the past. So when you're conscious, and you transition and you experience this field, you go up, hit the field, and you actually match the frequency of the field. And that's what I'm talking about, where like with conscious, that's the whole you're in duality. So you are the one strengthening the field, those that are conscious. You're speeding up your vibration a bit, but only enough to match the frequency of the actual field. So you're actually aware of the collective unconscious, and you want change, but you haven't personally made the change to understand how you can break out of it. And then that would be what teaches others to break out of their own veils. And the reason why I say this conscious is duality is because it's this perspective of I'm here, I know where I want to be, how do I start? And that's conscious. It's like the whole like framing, like you're woke. You see things, that's pretty much you see things. You don't act, you don't do. And that's why it matches the frequency of the collective unconscious field, because the collective unconscious only sees and says. It experiences all the things, all the bottled up emotions we have, all the things that we refuse to acknowledge, yet they exist. So cognitive dissonance. The collective unconscious is the consensus reality. The whole paradigm of heaven or hell, or life and death, existence and nothingness, black and white, whatever. It's the values that are like the most hardwired in our subconscious, and we try to shove it down and make it become unconscious, and then it builds up and it turns into something actually tangible, and that is this electromagnetic field that goes over all of our consciousness because we're all connected to it. Yet individually, each dot has its own influence. It's able to break out or stay within it. They refract already existing light. But the thing is, light is omnidirectional, which means everything's being hit by it, and so you are everything. And this is where we transition into the next part, which is present until the end. That's what allows you to pierce through the veil, okay? If you want to see it like this is how you leave Earth. This is how you reach enlightenment, how you ascend, whatever. So many culturally significant titles for this, but the idea is that to transcend this veil of unconscious or conscious so that you don't reincarnate or you don't experience this state of limbo where you're just experiencing the field, the everythingness, the source, returning the source instead of actually experiencing yourself as an individualized being. You have to be present until the end. So the idea is that by reestablishing yourself in each moment, you become collectively conscious. And you see, that's what pierces the veil, because the collective unconscious, it's like the passive ability in games. It's something that's there in the background. It can be seen if known about. When you are collectively conscious, instead of feeding into what's collectively unconscious, you break out of all these systems. Because these are all self-limiting beliefs. These are all self-destructive habits that are formed within the collective unconscious. Because they're things that we fear in ourselves. But if you created that fear, you're fearing yourself. This whole transcendent experience through life is really just remembering love. That's really all it is. And so, and also as you see here, how like the collective unconscious, it has its own frequency, okay? It's like the criteria of our planet, per se. Then we have conscious, where it's sped up just to match the frequency of that field. And then you have unconscious, where it's going pretty slow, and it can't even pierce or experience the field. It can only be bounced right back. With the present until the end, that vibration, which is you in the moment, is fluctuating. It's a mixture of both. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast as fuck. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast as fuck. The point is that
I'm fast as fuck, boy.
By adjusting to each moment, you treat everything at a moment-to-moment basis. And that's where you feel your sense of wholeness. When you can consistently maintain that state of present moment being, stillness, you're Gucci. You're Gucci now, and you're Gucci in the non-existent future. Because as long as you understand that happiness comes from concentrating on the present moment, you'll find joy in the smallest things. It'll be easier to laugh at things. And you'll always have vitality in your heart, because that's what powers you. Your heart's the battery. Your mind's the receiver. You can have both of those things working together simply by concentrating on the present moment. And so, how do you concentrate on the present moment? You focus your mind into concentration. It's weird because it's like concentration itself puts you into the present moment. It doesn't necessarily matter what you're concentrating on.
So he's calling you a terrible name. And you know that if you punch him out, it'll just confirm all the bad stuff he thinks about you.
Yes. You know what it feels like to be judged simply because of how you look?
Of course I do. I'm part robot.
You want to hope that whatever you're concentrating on in this sense is giving you an inward perspective. Because when you approach things from the inward perspective, you can understand all that is external. Because you see that there really is no separation between I and other. Okay? Meditation must have been a gift by like higher beings or even higher vibration. I just made that word up. I'm gonna keep it. Yeah. Must have been given to us as a gift by vibrational beings. Because I felt like, at first I was like, this should have been like an instinctual thing if meditation really was supposed to be like so important. It would have been something that we were born just like how a bird knows how to make a nest by stacking up a bunch of twigs. We would know how to naturally quiet our minds. And the thing is, we actually do. You know how I made that quote a while ago, where the universe is mental and the cause is subconscious. And that's the same thing here. The importance of saying that is that everything that happens in the universe is based on our actual energy body. Our energy body, or our fourth dimensional self, is what catalysts everything. The fourth dimension is the actual 0 point of human existence. Because we have the fourth dimension, which is the everythingness, potentiality, ideas, imagination, thoughts. We have the fifth dimension, which is the I am, actualization. Us being able to heat this water up and turn it into steam. And then we have the third dimension, which is practicality. Being able to actually shape this water into ice. That's also kind of funny how that works, because even with water, you have this permeable state, and like I showed on the vibrations, how like it gets slower and it speeds up after. When the atoms in the water get excited, they turn into steam, they evaporate, and then when it gets slower and slower, it turns into crystal, it turns into ice. But see, everything goes full circle. That's just the language of the world. But yeah, that's it. That's a quick video on a simple understanding of the prison planet. If you like the video, subscribe. Hit that like button, and also hit that bell, because I record my thoughts in the moment, but I tend to publish on Wednesdays. Not all the time, but you can always count on a video being there on a Wednesday. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Have a good day.
I'm drifting, babe, after possibility I went the ways. Over time we meet again, now face to face. Then you notice the chemistry, I fell from grace. More like that, it landed on its fucking face. Memories of the past, I watch it drag as it dissipates. Old emotions seem to just evaporate. Let me just elaborate. I'm another beach wave on a summer's day. Push people who get close so far away. Feelings of confusion as they try to wait. Jumping to conclusions, make contusions in the fucking brain. How did these illusions keep me fluid? I thought I was sane. Tried to crystallize, I am divine, there is another way. Vibratory state I claim.